What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. This is my January reading wrap-up video. It covers all of the books that I read in January. It's going to be a long one. I hope you already have your favorite beverage because I'm going to jump right into it. That's hot. First up, I read A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows by Renee. I immediately followed up this book with A Kingdom of Blood and Betrayal, which is book 2, and A Kingdom of Venom and Vows, which is book 3. All three of these books are part of the Stars and Shadows series by Renee. This series is about Adara, our female main character, who is star-blessed with magical blood. She's betrothed to a king from another kingdom from birth, and this king wants to use her magical blood and abilities for political gains. Adara ends up falling in love with the king's brother, who was sent to transport Adara safely from her home into the kingdom to meet the king. And what's even worse than this love being forbidden is that he is her fated mate. And now I'm going to pull the band-aid right off. My thoughts on this series are mixed. There were moments during this book, all of these books in fact, where I was really enjoying the story, but I quickly realized that the story just fell apart and there was no plot, like no plot whatsoever. All spice. There was so much potential for a good story to develop, and I kept believing that it was going to happen. Every time I turned a page, as soon as I got through book 1, I thought, well, maybe the story has just a slower start, so I'm going to read book 2. Read through book 2 and I thought, gosh, this isn't looking good. And of course, because apparently I enjoy punishing myself, I read book 3. At the point of the middle of book 3, I was done. After the third book, because I was good and I finished it, I did not finish the whole series. Book 4 did not follow the two main characters that books 1 through 3 did. It followed another couple. So I just threw in the towel and I'm like, no, we're done with this series. I was so utterly disappointed with this series that I gave it 2 stars in total. It was bad. It wasn't for me. And you know what? I don't want to yuck someone else's yum, but it was just bad. Like, I love having good plot, good story with romance in the backgrounds. I think that's more of what I enjoy. And this was straight up, like, I was just tired of reading this book. And I thought, gosh, does anybody else feel that way? So of course I go onto Reddit and Goodreads, and the reviews are hilarious. If you need a good laugh, go look at the reviews for these books because it was just brutal. They're brutal, guys. And I intentionally did not look at the reviews on Goodreads or Reddit before I started the series because I'm tired of being, like, I'm tired of the series being ruined for me, in a sense, that I want to make sure that I'm not waiting until this certain part that was mentioned in the review is going to come up now, or I should be feeling the same way that the reviewer feels with this part of the story by now. And it's not true. So I'm glad I didn't read ahead of the reviews, but this is one of the series which I wish I read the reviews. Hindsight is 2020. It's fine. So we ripped the band-aid right off the bat. And I promise they're going to get better from here. So A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows, obviously I read physically, and the other 2 books I read digitally. Next up, I read 2 books by author L.J. Andrews. First being Curse of Shadows and Thorns, the second one being Court of Ice and Ash. These both are books 1 and 2 of the Broken Kingdom series. So the Broken Kingdom series has 4 parts. The first parts being books 1 through 3, being the retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but with Vikings. So in this first group of the Unbroken Kingdom series, we follow Princess Elise, who is to be married off, and her dowry negotiator, Legion Grey. They fall in love, and it's forbidden. I'm only through books 1 and 2 of the 3 books of their stories, so I don't know what happens to them at this time. And I intentionally stopped reading both books so that I can purchase the physical series in a special and limited edition hardback run that author L.J. Andrews has coming out later on this year, because I love physical books. Now, I admit I was influenced for an entire year to read the Broken Kingdom series, so I had high expectations for these books. I even met author L.J. Andrews back in September at a Romantasy book event in Chicago, and right after that, I started collecting the Eversea series. Now, the Eversea series comes after the Broken Kingdoms, so I am collecting them out of order. No, I'm not reading them out of order. I'm just collecting them for now. And even back then, I planned on purchasing the whole series in a really pretty set. So the stakes and expectations were very high for the series for me. And now that I've read book 1 and 2, I can confirm it was totally worth it. I think I read both books in 2 days, and that is how hooked I was. So I put myself on pause for reading The Broken Kingdoms because I read both books digitally, and again, I want to read the physical copies, but I want to buy a really pretty limited edition set a little bit later on this year, so it'll be really nice to reread books 1 and 2, and then go on from the series from there. I gave books 1 and 2 each 4 stars. They're phenomenal. Highly recommend them. Go read them. Next up, I read We Who Will Die by Stacia Stark. We Who Will Die is about a woman who enters a tournament to win the favor of the Emperor, whom she must kill, in hopes to save her brothers. This book has vampires, and it's set in a gladiator-like arena. This is book 1 of I believe a trilogy, and I first heard about it back in August. Several months ago, I attended an event with Stacia Stark and Kelly Hart where we got a glimpse of what this book would be about. It came out in December, the very last part of December in 2025. We were given a quick synopsis of this book, and I gotta admit, I wasn't really intrigued because I'm not like a Greek gladiator girl. Now, I've read Edith Hamilton's mythology. I'm very well aware of all of the Stoics, which I enjoy. Socrates, I enjoy Plato. But as far as a time period that is appealing to me, ancient Greece is just not it. Sorry. The idea for this book was gladiators meets vampires and a second chance romance. I gotta say, I'm very, very glad I read this one. Really pleasantly surprised. I'm so glad I read this one. It was the first time I encountered an FMC who was emotionally tired and drained, more mature. I was beyond pleasantly surprised with how humanistic and how wonderful this book ended up being, particularly for a fantasy romance book. It was incredibly well written, and I'm really looking forward to the entire series. Next book comes out in January of 2027. I gave We Who Will Die by Stacia Stark 4 stars. Next up, I read On Wings of Blood by Briar Boleyn. In fact, this is book 1 of the Bloodwing Academy series. I also read The Bond That Burns, which is book 2. So in this story, we follow our FMC Maedra Pendragon. And this book probably has one of the coolest opening scenes that I have read so far. So our story opens up with Maedra Pendragon falling from the sky, and she lands literally on top of a pile of corpses. How epic is that? Yes, Briar Boleyn, you now have my attention. So she falls on this pile of corpses, and she's taken to Bloodwing Academy where she's learning to be a dragon rider. And this is because she has fiery red hair, which is something that only dragon riders had. Here comes the plot twist. The dragon riders have been gone for hundreds of years, along with the dragons that we know of. It is Maedra's red hair that has the king salivating to get his hands on her. And it's because of Maedra's red hair must represent, and that is the return of the dragon riders, which means the return of the dragons. Any kingdom who controls a dragon rider and the dragons controls the entire realm. Book 3 is coming out on March 10th, and yes, I've pre-ordered it already. So I stumbled upon the series by complete accident. I was browsing the hardback fantasy section, and I noticed this was a signed edition, and of course I'm a sucker for signatures. So I purchased this one, and then I realized, oh, this is book 2. Well, then I'm gonna have to buy book 1 as well. And I thought, oh, look at these really cool sprayed edges. Are there any other editions of it? So of course, book 2, I had to buy the cool sprayed edge edition. Whatever. So the signed edition doesn't have the same exact sprayed edges as the non-signed edition. But hey, you know what? They look cool on my shelf. Anyways, this is a really fun series. While this is a fun series, it does read a lot like Harry Potter, being that it is an academy that is located in a castle. The way the castle is decorated, it has enchanted lighting, enchanted pictures, and it also has 4 houses and that the students are separated into. I know. There's common rooms, the atmosphere of the common rooms as well as the castle grounds. It totally reminds me of Hogwarts, not gonna lie. Which is a bit of a, I'm not sure. It was right when I started on Wings of Blood, in that famous, like, epic first scene that really got me hooked in the series. Like, shortly after that, I realized, oh, I made a big mistake. And that mistake is not seeing if this series has a prequel series to it. And the answer is yes. Yes, it does have a prequel series. I had no idea. And I love the transition. So I read about the prequel series, and I love the transition into this new series. So I thought it was really, really brilliant. Haven't read the prequels. Honestly, I'm going to have to look into it before I do. I've also read quite a few of university, academia settings, and I don't think they're for me. It is a trope. I think it's great. I'm glad it's out there, but I don't think this is a trope for me. So I strongly feel that the Bloodwing Academy series is going to be my last academic university kind of setting, because you know what? I'm not at that age anymore, and it's not intriguing, it's not enticing, it doesn't bring back great memories either. So I think I'm going to at least take a very long extended pause on reading anything that is academic, university level settings. Yeah, I feel like I've just aged out of this trope, and that's okay. Overall, I gave this series 3 stars. Book 3 is on pre-order, and that arrives March 10th. And finally, the very last book that I read in January is the Mabinogion. The Mabinogion is a standalone, and it is a folklore. This is a collection of ancient Welsh medieval stories that predates the Canterbury Tales as well as the death of Arthur. The stories are full of adventure, chivalry, and political intrigue. I'm going to read the back for you. Drawing on myth, folklore, and history, the stories of the Mabinogion passed through generations of storytellers before they were written down in the 13th century. Set in dual realms of the forests and valleys of Wales and a shadowy otherworld, the tales are permeated by a dreamlike atmosphere. In Math, son of Mathonwy, the 2 brothers plot to carry off the Virginial Boleyn, while in Mabinogion, son of Lear, a spell is cast over the chieftain's land. King Arthur's court provides the backdrop to tales such as How Culhwch won Olwen, in which a young man must complete tasks to marry a giant's daughter, and Pedrer, son of Urwag, who strives to prove his valor as a knight. So I really enjoyed these multiple stories. I must say the progression of the plots and their complexity did advance from the beginning of the book to the end. The earliest stories were really confusing, as the preface did mention. The timeline was very broken towards the beginning. For example, characters that were intended to stay and remain in one part of the story, being a location for about a year, suddenly ended up in the adventurers' bandwagon, far off into the land the year later. And so there was no connecting the characters on how they got from point A to suddenly point B with everybody else. There are even characters that were duplicated in the very same story, which made it even more difficult to follow. These inconsistencies are most likely due to parts of the stories being forgotten as they're told throughout the generations. Many of these stories were not even written down until hundreds of years after they were first told. I do find it interesting that King Arthur, Guinevere, Lancelot, and even Percival do appear in this story. However, I have to emphasize the fact that King Arthur is already a great king, and none of these stories follow him as he is ascending to the great ruler and king that he does become. He's already there. He's already great. All in all, I gave the Mabinogion 4 stars. Even though it has a lot of inconsistencies and I found it a little confusing at points, I do consider this the OG of, like, the origin story of all of the medieval fiction, historical fiction, fantasy. All of these, the stories that we love and read today would not really be possible. I feel like they wouldn't be possible without writing down the verbal stories so long ago. This is part of, like, human history. So I really, really enjoyed it. I'm gonna give it the 4 stars as a placeholder because I might move it up to 5. We'll see. It's early in the year. I'm not sure. But yeah, this was absolutely incredible. I know that there are several other books that I am going to be reading later in the year that are heavily, heavily inspired by the Mabinogion, so I am so glad I read it early on. And there you have it, guys. All 9 books I read in the month of January. We got through them all. I did a lot of reading in February as well. So that video is coming up. All of the books I mentioned today are linked down below. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Bye!